The security camera footage plays in silence. 5 teenage boys circle a lone girl at McDonald's, their bodies forming a predatory wall around her booth. The timestamp reads 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that would change everything. What the grainy footage doesn't capture is the calculating look in 16-year-old Callista Stone's eyes as she mentally catalogues each face, each gesture, each tactical mistake her attackers are making. The girl they think they're cornering has spent her life moving from base to base with military parents. She knows how to read a room, assess threats, and most importantly, how to win a war that others don't even realize has started. But this isn't just about one girl and 5 boys at a fast food restaurant. This is about a system designed to protect the powerful while silencing the vulnerable. And sometimes it takes an outsider to expose what everyone else has learned to ignore. I'm building a community of people who care about justice and truth in our educational environments. If you also believe that every student deserves protection, hit like so I know you're part of us. Subscribe to get stories you won't find anywhere else. And if you want to help stories like this continue to be told, the thanks button will make us stronger in bringing justice to education. Because the real fight has only just begun. Callista Stone adjusts her backpack straps and surveys Milbrook High's sprawling campus. 3 weeks into her junior year, and she's already memorized every exit, identified the surveillance blind spots, and cataloged the social hierarchies with military precision. It's Tuesday morning, 7:30 a.m., and the familiar chaos of 1,000 teenagers floods the hallways. New girl, right? Mrs. Beth Hartwell extends a weathered hand as Callista approaches her homeroom. The teacher's smile doesn't quite reach her eyes, and there's something guarded in her expression that sets off Callista's internal alarm system. I'm Mrs. Hartwell. Welcome to Advanced Placement History. Thank you, ma'am. Callista's response carries the respectful cadence ingrained by years of military protocol. She notices how Mrs. Hartwell's shoulders relax slightly at the formal address. My father mentioned you have an excellent reputation. Your father? Mrs. Hartwell shuffles through her class roster. Colonel Stone, stationed at Whitmore Air Force Base? Yes, ma'am. We've moved 7 times in 10 years. Callista settles into a desk near the back corner. Strategic positioning allowing full visual coverage of the classroom while maintaining proximity to 2 separate exits. I've learned to adapt quickly. Mrs. Hartwell nods with understanding that comes from experience. She's clearly taught military children before. Adaptation is valuable, but so is knowing when to seek help. Some situations require more than individual resilience. Before Callista can respond, the classroom door swings open, and Sterling Ashford makes his entrance. Tall, perfectly groomed, carrying himself with the unconscious authority of someone who's never questioned his place in the world. His blonde hair catches the fluorescent lighting just so, his uniform blazer immaculate despite the early hour. He's followed by 4 other boys, his lieutenant commanders in what Callista immediately recognizes as a carefully orchestrated power structure. Mr. Ashford. Mrs. Hartwell's tone shifts to professional neutrality. Please take your seat. Of course, Mrs. H. Sterling's smile is practiced perfection as he surveys the room. His gaze stops on Callista, and she feels the weight of assessment. I don't believe we've met the new addition to our academic family. Callista Stone. She keeps her voice level, neither deferential nor challenging. Years of moving between military communities taught her to read power dynamics quickly, and everything about Sterling Ashford screams controlled predator. Sterling Ashford, Student Council President, National Honor Society, Varsity Lacrosse Captain. He delivers his credentials like a business card, The four boys behind him arrange themselves in supporting positions. My father is Dr. Ashford, superintendent of our district. I'm sure you'll find Milbrook very accommodating. The pause before accommodating carries weight. Callista files it away for analysis. I appreciate the welcome. We take care of our own here, Sterling continues, and there's something almost threatening in his perfectly pleasant tone. Of course, that requires understanding how things work. Some lessons can't be learned from textbooks. Mrs. Hartwell clears her throat. Mr. Ashford, perhaps you could save the orientation for after class? Absolutely. Sterling slides into his seat with fluid grace, but his attention remains fixed on Callista. She can feel him studying her reactions, testing for weakness, cataloging information for future use. The morning passes in predictable patterns. Teachers delivering lessons, students navigating social complexities, the constant undercurrent of teenage drama and academic pressure. But Callista notices things others miss. The way conversations quiet when Sterling passes, how teachers defer slightly to his opinions, the careful distance other students maintain around his inner circle. During lunch, she chooses a table with clear sightlines to most of the cafeteria. Tom Fletcher, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and calloused hands, approaches while wiping down nearby surfaces. You're the Colonel's daughter, right? Tom's voice carries the slight drawl of local roots. He's probably worked this cafeteria for decades, making him an invaluable source of institutional memory. I served 2 tours in Afghanistan before this job. Your dad's got a good reputation among the enlisted. Thank you. Dad always says the best officers listen to their sergeants. Callista smiles genuinely for the first time all day. How long have you been at Milbrook? 15 years come December. Tom glances around carefully, then leans slightly closer. Can I give you some friendly advice? Sterling Ashford and his crew, they're not like regular high school bullies. They're more sophisticated, more connected. They don't leave bruises you can photograph. What do you mean? Tom's expression darkens. They destroy reputations instead, spread rumors, manipulate social media, turn the whole school against someone until that person has no choice but to transfer. I've seen it happen 6 times in 3 years. 6 times? Callista's military-trained mind immediately begins calculating patterns. What kind of students did they target? Smart ones, mostly. Kids who ask too many questions, challenged the wrong teacher, or just happened to catch Sterling's attention the wrong way. Tom straightens as a group of students approaches the serving line. Just be careful, okay? Some battles aren't worth fighting. But as Callista watches Sterling hold court at his corner table, surrounded by admirers and supplicants, she thinks about her father's favorite military axiom. The most dangerous enemy is the one who believes he's untouchable. The afternoon brings chemistry class, where Callista finds herself partnered with Sarah Mills, a quiet girl with intelligent eyes who seems to vibrate with nervous energy. Sarah keeps glancing toward Sterling's lab station, where he's effortlessly charming their teacher while his lab partner does most of the actual work. You're really brave, Sarah whispers, as they measure solutions. I heard what happened at lunch. What happened at lunch? Callista hadn't realized her conversation with Tom Fletcher had been observed. Sterling was watching you talk to the janitor guy. He doesn't like it when people get too friendly with the staff. Sarah's hands shake slightly as she adds drops to their mixture. He thinks it shows poor judgment. Poor judgment? Callista's voice carries just enough edge to make Sarah flinch. Talking to decent people who actually work for a living? I just meant… Sarah's stammering draws attention from nearby lab stations. Callista notices how several students turn to watch, as if witnessing a potentially explosive situation. "Hey, no problem with the new girl. Is there Sarah?" Sterling appears beside their table with the fluid movement of a natural predator. Up close, Callista can see that his perfect smile doesn't extend to his ice-blue eyes. Sometimes it takes time to understand our school culture. "There's no problem." Callista meets his gaze directly, a calculated risk that causes Sarah to inhale sharply. "Sarah was just helping me understand the chemistry." "Chemistry." Sterling draws out the word with subtle mockery. Such a complex subject. So many volatile reactions possible when you mix the wrong elements together. The threat is delivered with such polished civility that any teacher overhearing would miss it entirely. But Callista catches the underlying message clearly. She's being warned to stay in line or face consequences. "I appreciate the concern," Callista replies with matching politeness, "but my family has experience with volatile situations. We've learned that the key is understanding exactly what you're dealing with before you choose your response." Sterling's smile falters for just a microsecond, barely perceptible, but Callista's trained observation skills catch it. For the first time, she said something that pierced his confidence, even momentarily. "Well then," Sterling recovers smoothly, "I'm sure you'll make all the right choices." He turns to Sarah with practiced charm. "Miss Mills, I trust you'll continue being helpful to our new student?" Sarah nods frantically, her face pale with what Callista now recognizes isn't just shyness. It's fear. The McDonald's incident happens exactly as Tom Fletcher warned it would. Not through random violence, but through careful orchestration designed to send a message while maintaining plausible deniability. Callista arrives at the restaurant at 3:30 p.m., following her routine of stopping for coffee before her evening job at the base commissary. The afternoon crowd is typical. Young families, construction workers on break, high school students killing time before sports practice or part-time jobs. She's barely settled into a corner booth when Sterling and his 4 companions enter. Their timing is too precise to be coincidental, and Callista's situational awareness immediately shifts to high alert. They don't approach directly. Instead, they order food with exaggerated casual behavior, spreading throughout the restaurant in positions that gradually form a perimeter around her location. The actual confrontation begins subtly. One of Sterling's crew accidentally bumps into her table while passing, causing her coffee to spill. Another makes loud comments about military brats who think they're special. A third starts filming with his phone, claiming he's making a social media video about interesting local characters. Within 5 minutes, Callista finds herself the center of attention in a room full of witnesses. But every action taken against her maintains the thinnest veneer of plausible deniability. They haven't technically threatened her, haven't used profanity, haven't committed any crime that would show up clearly on surveillance footage. "Sorry about the coffee," Sterling says with practiced concern as he slides uninvited into the booth across from her. His 4 allies position themselves to block the most direct exits. "My friend Marcus can be clumsy sometimes." "No problem." Callista keeps her voice steady while mentally calculating response options. She could leave, but that would establish a pattern of retreat that would only encourage escalation. She could escalate, but these boys have clearly done this before and probably have contingency plans for various responses. "Good attitude. I was just telling the guys how impressive it is that military families sacrifice so much for our country." Sterling's tone remains conversational, but his eyes are predatory. Of course, sometimes that lifestyle can be hard on kids. All that moving around, never really belonging anywhere, always being the outsider. The psychological attack is expertly crafted. He's probing for emotional vulnerabilities, while establishing narrative justification for what comes next. Callista recognizes the technique from her father's lectures on information warfare. "Movement builds adaptability," she responds calmly. "You learn to read situations quickly." "I'm sure you do." Sterling leans forward slightly. "For instance, you've probably already figured out that Milbrook has its own ecosystem. Certain people have earned respect through years of service to our community, while others are still establishing their place. Is that what this is about? Establishing my place?" One of Sterling's allies, a broad-shouldered boy with dead eyes, steps closer to their table. "Sterling's trying to help you understand how things work around here. Most people appreciate that kind of guidance." The implicit threat hangs in the air. Callista can feel other customers beginning to notice the tension, but no one intervenes. This is exactly what Sterling wants. A public demonstration of power that sends a message to both Callista and any potential witnesses. But Sterling has made one crucial miscalculation. He's assumed that because Callista is new and outnumbered, she'll respond with typical teenage emotions: fear, anger, or submission. He doesn't realize that military children learn to think tactically under pressure. "You know what I find interesting?" Callista's voice carries a new quality that makes Sterling's confident expression flicker. "You've positioned yourselves to control my exit routes, staged this confrontation in a public place with surveillance cameras, and you're delivering threats that sound like friendly advice to anyone not paying close attention." Sterling's smile becomes fixed. "I'm not sure what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm observing that this is a very sophisticated psychological operation for high school students." Callista stands smoothly, her movement forcing Sterling's allies to adjust their positions. The question is, where did you learn these techniques? For the first time, uncertainty flickers across Sterling's face. He's accustomed to victims who react emotionally, not ones who analyze his methodology with clinical detachment. "I think you're overthinking a simple welcome conversation," he says, but there's less confidence in his voice. "Maybe." Callista gathers her things with deliberate calm. "But my father always taught me that when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." She walks toward the exit with measured steps. Sterling's crew parts reluctantly, clearly uncertain about escalating without their leader's direct orders. As she reaches the door, Callista turns back with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "Thanks for the warm welcome, Sterling. I'm sure we'll have many more opportunities to get acquainted." The real revelation comes during fourth period the next day. Mrs. Hartwell pulls Callista aside after class with an expression of poorly concealed worry. "Can you stay for a few minutes? I'd like to discuss your academic transition." The teacher's request sounds routine, but her body language suggests something more serious. When the last student leaves, Mrs. Hartwell closes the classroom door and activates the privacy screen on her window. Actions that suggest this conversation is definitely not about academic performance. "I heard about yesterday afternoon," she begins carefully. Word travels fast in a small community. "News of a conversation at McDonald's?" Callista keeps her tone neutral. That seems like a pretty low threshold for gossip. "It wasn't just a conversation, was it?" Mrs. Hartwell settles into the desk chair across from Callista with the weariness of someone carrying a heavy burden. "Look, I've been teaching here for 12 years. I've seen Sterling Ashford grow up, watched him develop his methods." "Methods?" "He doesn't operate like traditional bullies. He's too smart for that, too connected." Mrs. Hartwell opens her desk drawer and pulls out a thick folder. "I've been documenting incidents for 3 years, patterns of behavior, Student complaints. Academic irregularities. Callista's pulse quickens. Academic irregularities. Students who challenge Sterling or his inner circle often find themselves facing disciplinary action for violations they didn't commit. Phones discovered in their lockers during surprise searches, essays flagged for plagiarism that later proves fabricated, anonymous reports of academic dishonesty that somehow always get corroborated by multiple witnesses. The scope of what Mrs. Hartwell is describing goes far beyond typical high school social dynamics. This sounds like institutional manipulation at a sophisticated level. Have you reported this to the administration? Mrs. Hartwell's laugh carries no humor. I've filed 17 formal reports in 3 years. They disappear into the bureaucratic system, and nothing happens. Meanwhile, the students who made complaints either transfer schools or suddenly withdraw their accusations. Someone's protecting him. Someone's protecting him, Mrs. Hartwell confirms grimly. The question is how high that protection goes and what they're willing to do to maintain it. Callista stares at the folder in Mrs. Hartwell's hands, understanding that she's looking at evidence of something much bigger than high school bullying. This is systematic corruption with institutional backing, and she's somehow stumbled into the middle of it. Why are you telling me this? Because you're different from his usual targets. You didn't back down yesterday, and word of that is already spreading. Mrs. Hartwell leans forward intently. But that also makes you more dangerous to him, which means the response will be more severe. What kind of response? The kind that destroys lives, Mrs. Hartwell says quietly. Sterling doesn't just defeat his enemies, he erases them. The pieces begin falling into place during lunch on Thursday. Callista notices Sarah Mills sitting alone at a corner table, picking at her food with nervous energy while repeatedly glancing toward Sterling's usual domain. There's something different about Sarah today, a quality of suppressed panic that sets off Callista's protective instincts. Mind if I sit? Callista approaches carefully, noting how Sarah flinches at the sound of her voice. Sure. Sarah's stammering has worsened since chemistry class. She looks like someone carrying a terrible secret. Everything okay? You seem stressed? Callista settles across from Sarah while maintaining visual contact with Sterling's table. She notices 2 of his allies watching their interaction with obvious interest. I'm fine, just tired. Sarah's denial is transparently false. Her hands shake as she reaches for her water bottle. Sarah, if something's bothering you, maybe I can help. Help? Sarah's voice cracks slightly. You can't help. Nobody can help. You don't understand how things work here. Then explain it to me. Sarah glances around frantically, then leans closer with desperate intensity. You need to apologize to Sterling. Publicly. Make it clear that you respect his position and don't want any trouble. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, he'll destroy you. And I can't. I won't. Sarah's composure crumbles entirely. I saw what happened at McDonald's, okay? I was there with my mom, and I saw everything. Callista's tactical mind immediately recognizes the significance. Sarah was a witness to Sterling's psychological operation, which means she has evidence of his methods. What exactly did you see? The whole thing was planned. They didn't just happen to be there. Sarah's words tumble out in a rushed whisper. I heard Sterling tell Marcus to accidentally bump your table, saw him signal the others to position themselves around the exits. It was like watching a military operation. If you witnessed all that, then you know Sterling was the aggressor. It doesn't matter what I know. Sarah's voice rises slightly, causing several nearby students to look in their direction. He found out I was there, And now he's... She stops abruptly, terror replacing panic in her expression. Now he's what, Sarah? Nothing. Forget I said anything. Sarah stands abruptly, gathering her things with shaking hands. Just apologize to Sterling, okay? For everyone's sake. But as Sarah hurries away, Callista notices something that makes her blood run cold. Sterling is watching their entire interaction with the satisfied expression of a chess player who's just executed a complex strategy. He doesn't just know that Sarah witnessed his McDonald's operation, he's using her knowledge as leverage. The full scope of Sterling's system becomes clear during sixth period, when Tom Fletcher approaches Callista's table in the library. His usual friendly demeanor has been replaced by barely contained anger. "We need to talk," he says quietly. "Not here. Meet me in the maintenance corridor behind the gymnasium after school." The maintenance corridor is a narrow space between buildings where Tom stores cleaning supplies and equipment. It's also completely invisible to surveillance cameras and foot traffic, making it ideal for sensitive conversations. "What's going on, Tom?" "They got to Sarah Mills," Tom says without preamble. "Sterling's people planted evidence in her locker this morning. A test answer key that matches next week's chemistry exam." Callista's stomach drops. "Evidence of cheating?" "Fabricated evidence, but it doesn't matter. The key was in her handwriting, probably copied from stolen materials while she wasn't looking." Tom's expression is grim. "She's being called to the principal's office tomorrow morning." "Can't she just explain what really happened?" "Explain what? That the most popular student in school is framing her for academic dishonesty? That the superintendent's son is running psychological operations against other students?" Tom shakes his head. "They've done this before, Callista. The system protects Sterling because his father controls the system." "His father?" "Dr. Richard Ashford, district superintendent for 8 years. He's built his reputation on Milbrook's academic excellence and low disciplinary incidents." Tom's voice carries bitter irony. "Hard to maintain those statistics if you acknowledge that your own son is systematically terrorizing other students." The institutional dimension of Sterling's operation suddenly becomes clear. This isn't just about high school social dynamics. It's about maintaining a carefully constructed public image that benefits the entire Ashford family. How many students has this happened to? 6 that I know of, probably more. They either transfer quietly or suddenly develop behavioral problems that justify their removal. Tom meets Callista's eyes intently. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" "What can I do? I'm just one student." "Maybe, but you're also a colonel's daughter with military training and no local social connections to leverage against you." Tom's expression sharpens. Sterling's never faced someone who couldn't be intimidated or isolated. Callista stares at the concrete walls of the maintenance corridor, understanding that she's reached a decision point. She can back down, apologize publicly, and hope Sterling leaves her alone. Or she can choose to fight a war she didn't start against an enemy with institutional protection. "Tom, how much documentation do you have about Sterling's operations?" "Enough to prove a pattern, if anyone was willing to look at it objectively." Tom pulls out his phone. "I've been photographing evidence for 2 years, waiting for someone brave enough to use it." "What kind of evidence?" Tom scrolls through images on his phone. Photographs of planted materials in lockers, screenshots of social media harassment campaigns, documentation of grade changes, and disciplinary reports that don't match the actual incidents. "This is enough to expose everything," Callista breathes. "If we can get it to the right authorities. But remember, Sterling's father controls the local system, and most parents don't want to believe their perfect suburban school district has this kind of corruption." Callista studies the evidence with growing determination. She's spent her life watching her father serve his country with honor and integrity. She's not about to let some privileged teenager and his enablers destroy innocent students just to maintain their perfect public image. Tom, I need to ask you something important. If we move forward with this, Sterling's going to escalate in ways we can't predict. Are you prepared for the consequences? Tom's smile is grim but determined. Sweetheart, I've been waiting 3 years for someone to ask me that question. As Callista walks toward the parking lot, her mind is already working on strategy. She's about to go to war with an enemy who has institutional protection, unlimited resources, and no moral constraints. But Sterling Ashford has made one crucial miscalculation. He's chosen to target the daughter of a career military officer who was raised on the principle that when good people do nothing, evil triumphs. The real fight is about to begin. Callista spends the weekend studying Sterling's methodology with the same analytical precision her father applies to military intelligence. She maps his social network, identifies his information sources, and begins constructing a strategy that uses his own psychological tactics against him. The key insight comes Sunday evening while reviewing Tom Fletcher's photographic evidence. Sterling's operations require inside intelligence about his targets, personal information, family secrets, academic vulnerabilities that can be weaponized when necessary. Someone has been feeding him detailed psychological profiles of potential victims. Someone like Sarah Mills, who has access to student conversations, sits close enough to overhear sensitive discussions and displays exactly the right combination of apparent vulnerability and hidden opportunism to serve as an intelligence asset. Monday morning, Callista implements the first phase of her counter-operation. She approaches Sarah before homeroom with carefully crafted misinformation designed to test her hypothesis. Sarah, I need to tell you something, but you have to promise to keep it secret. Callista glances around nervously, projecting the exact kind of desperation that Sterling's network would find irresistible. My parents are getting divorced. My mom found out about my dad's affair with another officer's wife. Sarah's eyes widen with what appears to be genuine sympathy. Oh no, that's terrible. The worst part is, if word gets out, it could destroy my dad's military career. You know how strict they are about moral conduct. Callista lets her voice crack slightly. I'm so scared about what will happen to our family. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone, Sarah says earnestly. But Callista notices how her eyes dart toward Sterling's usual morning position near the main entrance. By third period, the test information has made its way through Sterling's network. Marcus Chen approaches Callista's locker with the predatory smile of someone who believes he's cornering wounded prey. Hey, military girl. Heard things are getting complicated at home. His tone carries mock sympathy. Must be hard, having your perfect family image fall apart in public. The speed of information transfer confirms Callista's suspicions. Sarah Mills isn't an intimidated witness. She's Sterling's primary intelligence source, positioned to gather ammunition against potential targets. I don't know what you're talking about, Callista replies carefully. Come on, don't be embarrassed. Family problems happen to everyone. Marcus leans against the adjacent locker with casual menace. Of course, some families handle their problems more privately than others. The implied threat is clear. Sterling's network knows about her fabricated family crisis and plans to weaponize it if she continues challenging their authority. I'm really curious about your thoughts. If you were the parent of this girl, what would you do when you discovered your child was being targeted by a group with power in the school who were manipulating other students to isolate her? Share in the comments. I think all of us have experienced the sting of betrayal before, because the decision she makes next will change the entire game. The school assembly on Wednesday provides the perfect opportunity for Callista's ultimate revelation. The entire student body and faculty gathered in one location, with streaming capabilities for parents and community members who cannot attend in person. Sterling takes the stage as student council president, delivering a carefully crafted speech about academic integrity and community values. His performance is flawless, confident, articulate, projecting exactly the kind of leadership qualities that have made him untouchable within the system. But Callista has spent 3 days preparing for this moment. She's coordinated with Tom Fletcher to ensure proper documentation, established secure communication channels with Mrs. Hartwell, and most importantly, she's pre-recorded her evidence presentation to prevent interference from administrative controls. As Sterling concludes his remarks about maintaining the highest standards of conduct, Callista activates her carefully planned counter-operation. The pre-recorded live stream begins broadcasting simultaneously across multiple social media platforms. Her video opens with the McDonald's security footage, clearly showing Sterling's crew positioning themselves around her table in a coordinated pattern that contradicts their claims of coincidental encounter. My name is Callista Stone, and for the past month, I've been documenting a systematic pattern of psychological manipulation and institutional corruption at Milbrook High School. The assembly erupts in confused murmurs as students realize what's happening. Teachers scramble to regain control. But Callista's broadcast is already reaching hundreds of viewers across multiple platforms. Her presentation methodically exposes Sterling's entire operation: the fabricated evidence planted in student lockers, the social media harassment campaigns, the coordination between his network and administrative disciplinary actions. Most damaging of all, she reveals the institutional protection provided by his father's position as district superintendent. Sarah Mills has been feeding Sterling Ashford intelligence about potential targets for 3 years. Callista's recorded voice continues as she displays documentary evidence. What appears to be witness intimidation is actually asset management. Sarah isn't Sterling's victim, she's his accomplice. Sterling's perfect composure finally cracks. His face goes white as the full scope of his exposed operations sinks in. But the most devastating revelation is yet to come. Dr. Richard Ashford has systematically buried complaints about his son's behavior while allowing innocent students to be transferred or expelled based on fabricated evidence. This isn't just high school bullying. This is institutional corruption that destroys lives to protect one family's reputation. The assembly descends into chaos as parents, teachers, and students process the implications. Local news crews, alerted by Callista's social media campaign, are already gathering outside the school as the story spreads beyond the immediate community. Sterling stumbles from the stage, his carefully constructed image crumbling in real time. For the first time in his life, he faces consequences he cannot manipulate or avoid. The aftermath unfolds with the relentless momentum of institutional collapse. Within 48 hours, federal investigators arrive to examine the district's compliance with educational civil rights statutes. Local media coverage intensifies as more families come forward with stories of mysterious disciplinary actions and sudden school transfers. Dr. Richard Ashford submits his resignation rather than face a public hearing. Sterling is hospitalized for severe anxiety after suffering a panic attack during questioning by federal investigators. Sarah Mills withdraws from school entirely, her parents citing concerns about her emotional well-being. But victory comes with costs that Callista hadn't fully anticipated. Her family faces intense media scrutiny as her father's military career becomes part of the public narrative. Anonymous threats appear on social media, forcing increased security around their home and daily routines. Mrs. Hartwell is transferred to another district despite her role in documenting Sterling's operations. Tom Fletcher loses his custodial position due to budget constraints that coincidentally occur just weeks after his evidence becomes public. The support system that made Callista's revelation possible is systematically dismantled by those seeking to limit the damage. Was it worth it? Her father asks one evening as they watch news coverage of the ongoing federal investigation. Callista considers the question carefully. 6 families have received formal apologies and academic record corrections. Sterling's network has been permanently disrupted, and systemic changes are being implemented to prevent similar corruption. But the personal cost has been higher than she expected. "I keep thinking about all the students who transferred before I got here," she says finally. "Kids who gave up rather than fight a system designed to protect the powerful. And now? Now other students know they have options. They know that institutional protection isn't absolute, and that one person willing to document evidence and take risks can expose even sophisticated corruption." Her father nods with understanding, born from decades of military service. Justice often requires personal sacrifice. The question is whether you can live with the consequences of action or inaction. 3 months later, Callista's family receives transfer orders to a new base assignment. As she packs her belongings, she discovers a letter from Mrs. Hartwell describing troubling patterns at her new district that sound disturbingly familiar. The golden arches of the local McDonald's catch the afternoon sunlight as Callista drives past for the final time. What once represented false promises and predatory territory now symbolizes transparency and the possibility of change. But she understands that victory in one battle doesn't end the war. Her phone buzzes with a message from an unknown number. "Thank you for showing us how to fight back. We're watching for the patterns now." Callista smiles as she types her response. "Document everything. Trust your instincts. And remember, they're only untouchable until someone refuses to be intimidated." The moving truck pulls away from Milbrook as the sun sets behind the school district offices. Callista watches the familiar buildings disappear, knowing that some battles require ongoing vigilance rather than final victory. Justice isn't free. It costs everyone something. But silence costs even more. 6 months later, Callista receives an email from Tom Fletcher at his new job as head of maintenance for a community college 2 states away. The subject line reads, "Thank you," but the contents reveal ongoing consequences she hadn't anticipated. "The investigation you triggered went deeper than anyone expected," Tom writes. "They found evidence of similar operations in 3 other districts where Dr. Ashford previously worked. Turns out, Sterling learned these techniques from watching his father manipulate administrative systems for years." The revelation reframes everything Callista thought she understood about their victory. Sterling wasn't just a privileged teenager drunk on power. He was the product of systematic institutional corruption that spanned multiple communities and destroyed dozens of innocent families. "Federal prosecutors are building cases that could take years to resolve," Tom continues. Meanwhile, Sterling's been in therapy since the breakdown. His doctors say he genuinely believed he was protecting the school by eliminating disruptive elements. The scary part is, he still thinks he was justified. Callista saves the email and walks to her bedroom window overlooking the new base housing complex. Military families move constantly, adapting to new environments with practiced efficiency, but each transfer carries forward lessons learned from previous assignments. Her phone buzzes with a text from Mrs. Hartwell. "New district, same patterns. Different players, identical methods. Ready for round 2? The message includes photographs that make Callista's stomach clench. Fabricated evidence planted in student lockers, academic records mysteriously altered, Anonymous harassment campaigns targeting anyone who questions administrative decisions. The corruption that destroyed Sterling's network at Milbrook has simply migrated to new territory. But there's also a second message, this one from Sarah Mills. I've been in counseling for months. My therapist says I need to make amends. I want to help expose the system I helped create. I have information about other districts, other families they destroyed. Will you work with me? The offer represents both opportunity and risk. Sarah's intelligence about Sterling's broader network could expose corruption across multiple school systems, but trusting someone who betrayed her once requires a leap of faith that could backfire catastrophically. Callista stares at her reflection in the window glass, seeing not just a military teenager who happened to stumble into someone else's war, but a young woman who understands that individual courage can spark systemic change when combined with strategic thinking and documented evidence. Her father appears in the doorway, holding transfer orders for his next assignment. The expression on his face suggests he already knows what she's thinking. Colorado Springs, reporting date in 8 weeks, he says quietly. There's a high school district there with some interesting administrative challenges, according to the local base commander. Interesting how? 6 student transfers this year, all involving accusations of academic misconduct that parents claim were fabricated. Sound familiar? Callista turns from the window with the same calculating expression Sterling once mistook for vulnerability. She's learned to read institutional power structures, document systematic abuse, and expose corruption that hides behind perfect public facades. Dad, what do you know about federal whistleblower protections for minors? Her father's smile carries pride mixed with concern. More than I hoped you'd ever need to learn, but if you're asking, I assume you're not planning to let this pattern continue unchecked. Some battles require ongoing vigilance, Callista says, echoing her earlier realization. And I'm getting pretty good at this particular kind of warfare. The golden light of sunset fades behind military housing as Callista begins planning her next operation. The war against institutional corruption is far from over, but she's no longer fighting alone. Her laptop screen illuminates the darkening room as she opens a new document titled Operation Transparent Shield. The first entry reads, Colorado Springs High School District, initial assessment required. Below that, she adds contact information for Tom Fletcher, Mrs. Hartwell, and surprisingly, Sarah Mills. The network she's building spans multiple states now, connecting teachers, staff members, and reformed accomplices who understand that silence enables systematic abuse. Every new assignment becomes an opportunity to identify, document, and expose the patterns that destroy innocent students' lives. Some fights choose you. Callista has chosen to fight back.